And to start things off, I'd just like to say I think it's very nice to see nation states adopting Bitcoin, accepting the obvious. But I want to bring up something that my dear Canadian friend BTC Sessions once told me. He said, if top-down were all that mattered, top-down would have already given us Bitcoin. We needed bottom-up for Bitcoin to even have a chance at existing. It's the bottom-up that changes the world.
And Bitcoin is fundamentally a bottom-up movement. I mean, real adoption starts with individuals choosing better money.
And when a group of those individuals gets together and starts accepting better money, we call that a Bitcoin circular community.
Up next, we have Living on Bitcoin, real stories from Bitcoin circular communities.
Moderated by Agilex, the head of international operations at the Plan B network. Please give him a warm welcome to the stage.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Carla. Thank you, Walker. So Bitcoin is money, so I'm happy to have a few guests that have made it real around the world to be talking about how could we create circular communities where Bitcoin can be spent. So I'm glad to be welcoming today to the stage Herman Vivier from Bitcoin Icasi. Next, I have Jem Otudor from Bitcoin Calabria in Nigeria. Someone that I know from a community, I had the chance to visit, Roman Martinez from Bitcoin Beach, El Salvador. And also another community I was lucky to visit in Madeira, with Free Madeira, Andre Loja. All right, so really happy to see you guys all here today. I wanted first to ask you, how did you get started with your circular economies, and for you to give us a little bit of background of where they are and what and how they are. Maybe we can start with you.
Well, in my case, it was a bit of an accident. I was already a Bitcoiner, I guess, and I have some businesses in Madeira. And I wanted to contribute something, and not being a developer, the first idea I had at the time was a publishing company. We started translating good Bitcoin books into the Portuguese language. And then the network started to grow with some important people, authors and so forth. And when the opportunity arose to bring the president to Miami for the conference, to kind of start a project there, it all unfolded very quickly. And I had to put myself out there and create the Free Madeira as a non-profit. And the whole goal is to be a beacon of adoption and education on Bitcoin in the island. And everything that happened afterwards was just stepping stones on the natural evolution of the organization, I guess.
All right, thank you for that. So everybody has heard of El Salvador now, but you were here when it began. So how did Bitcoin Beach start?
Yeah, we're a group of friends. I'm one of them. There is Mike Peterson and Peter Di Soto that we were already working with social initiative in El Zonte. I born there, so I was one of the kids that was part of the programs in the beginning. Yeah. And then in 2019, we start using Bitcoin in our community for the social initiative that we were developing. And 2019 and in 2020, when the pandemic came, El Zonte is a small town that lived from tourism, and the tourism went down, right? And that moment we started working with families and set up of the kids, and that was really interesting because Bitcoin Beach in 2020 show and prove how one community can change, and how Bitcoin was the last puzzle that we were, the last tool that we were looking, to empowerment our community, and show how Bitcoin can be money, it can be money to empowerment communities. And launch our history in 2021, President Bukele decided to make Bitcoin legal tender. And since that moment, El Salvador became the first Bitcoin country in the world. And here we are.
And here we are. Thank you. What about you, James? Can you tell us a little bit more about Bitcoin Calabra?
All right. Sorry. All right. With Bitcoin Beach before us and Bitcoin Ikasi, I started some Bitcoin projects when I got into the Bitcoin ecosystem, Nigerian Bitcoin ecosystem. So I was involved in some other projects, and I spoke with Scott Wolf, who showed me Bitcoin Ikasi's work and Bitcoin Beach work also, and encouraged me that, look, all these projects you're doing, you can actually use them to run a circular economy that will actually make more impact in the locals, right? So we opted for that, and we started, we aggregated all the projects we were doing, from the secondary school club to, you know, the lawsuit with the Nigerian government, to meetups and everything we're doing, and we started a circular economy with the help of FBCE, Federation of Bitcoin Circular Economy.
Thank you. And with another one on the African continent, can you tell us a little bit more about Bitcoin Ikasi?
Yeah, sure thing. I think, like everybody else, stumbled across Bitcoin, had no idea what it was, and was properly orange-pilled when we used it in a unrelated business to circumvent sanctions. We had clients stuck behind sanctions, and it blew my mind that you could do this. And subsequent to that, that was in 2015, I watched it with great interest, and I got to a certain point where I realized I think more people need to use this if it's going to ever work. And then I saw the Bitcoin Beach story in 2019. Mike was being interviewed by a podcaster, Peter McCormack, and even he was skeptical about whether this could work or not. But a light bulb went off my head, and I was like, well, that's what you need to do to make Bitcoin money. They've got it right. And we had an existing organization, a charity organization. We basically just said, well, look, we'll just flip the charity to Bitcoin. So instead of doing fundraising in fiat, we'll do it in Bitcoin. Instead of paying salaries in fiat, we'll do it in Bitcoin. And that was in 2021. And we've basically been doing that since then, converting our charity and our business over to a Bitcoin standard and trying to encourage other people to do the same thing.
Cool. So with some inspiration from Bitcoin Beach all the way to Bitcoin Ikasi in
Absolutely.
South Africa.
Yeah.
Super nice to hear. So maybe we can talk about, in general, for the Bitcoin ecosystem, why do circular economies matter? How does it reinforce Bitcoin, in your opinion, if someone wants to answer that?
Well, it's money, isn't it?
It is.
You've got to use it.
Well, some people make the argument that you should hodl it, and some people think that you should spend. Do any of you guys can tell me why you think you can do both, or maybe only one, but I guess you will be on the same side as me, think that you can actually spend your Bitcoin and you don't only have to hold them?
I'm going to answer the first question, why Bitcoin circular economies matter. Is in my point of view, all the Bitcoin circular economies are in the first line, proving that Bitcoin was designed to become money, you know, and are the projects leading in Bitcoin education, Bitcoin inclusion, you know. And when you see all these projects in Africa, in Latin America, in Central America, using the same tool, the same technology in different ways, you know, but everyone benefit from the same tool, from the same technology, I think that is beautiful, that for the first time we have a tool, we have a technology that actually is inclusive and can help to bring opportunities to communities that never had before, like Bitcoin Beach, you know.
I mean, I can maybe just add to that. I think it matters because there's a significant number of people in the world who are not going to learn and to trust Bitcoin by reading a book. As much as I'd like that to be the case, in many cases we're dealing with people who learn by doing, and learn to trust systems by doing. And so if you're introducing Bitcoin into their lives through spending, the end goal is still the same. The end goal is still saving. We're not teaching people how to spend Bitcoin. We're teaching them how to spend so that they can get to saving in Bitcoin. And circular economies prove that works. Most of the people that we've introduced to Bitcoin, the vast majority of them, start by spending and end up by saving. There's not a single person who works for us for more than a year, year and a half. Maybe it takes 2 years, but all of them eventually make the decision to start saving this stuff. They don't quite understand what it is yet, and maybe it'll take them a long time to learn, but one thing they do know is that it holds the value far better than anything else they've ever used, because most of them don't have access to stock portfolios, investment portfolios, bank accounts, whatever the case may be. Whatever they do is cash in a shoebox. And that's why it matters, I think.
I would add to that every jurisdiction is very different, and I guess from the ones represented here, I'm the most different one, as we are in a much more developed country under the EU. So our reality is very different, and most of our education efforts, and I agree, but most people won't learn by reading a book. But if you put yourself out there, and that's why these projects are so important, people come, and if you start doing the workshops and the meetups and the education projects, people will come, and they will learn faster, and the adoption rate will increase further. But a lot of our conversation there, because we come from a more fortunate place, let's put it like that, within quotes, a lot of people in Portugal look at Bitcoin as an investable asset only, like a tradable, like a get rich quick and the forth. So a lot of our efforts come into educating about the protocol and the characteristics of the protocol and why it's so important to use it as a medium of exchange. And so also our effort has been a lot on increasing the community and the merchant adoption. We have, Madeira is a small place, but we have already 170 merchants around all over the island, from supermarkets to pharmacies to you name it. And it truly created now a circular economy, a SAT flow economy, and where the merchants see payments every day, and it's being so normalized now that it's great to see. So.
Yeah, okay. I think circular economies are actually a lifeline to Bitcoin adoption, because it actually really connects the community with what Bitcoin actually is, money, right? So circular economies will help people understand that, yeah, Bitcoin is not just an asset that should be somewhere waiting, it's something that should go around, something that should be spent, something that should be used as money, and all of that. So I think it's actually a lifeline to Bitcoin adoption.
Can I mention something else there? Yes, I think people in more privileged or developed parts of the world have as much to benefit from circular economies. I'm very suspicious of the whole stablecoin movement and the support for stablecoins, and I think circular economies encourage people to spend Bitcoin as freedom money, which it was intended to be. I'm very suspicious. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, a stablecoin might as well be a CBDC. And I think we need to demonstrate that Bitcoin is everyday money. And I mean, I was inspired by Bitcoin Beach, but only after the fact learned that it was in Europe where this idea sort of originated with what they're doing in Arnhem, and they've been doing that since 2014. And that goes to show that in the more privileged developed world, there's just as much of a need. I don't think it should be seen as something that's undeveloped, or it's in the underprivileged part of the world where people use Bitcoin as money, and in the rest of the world it's a store of value. I think it's just as important, because let's face it, my government in South Africa is too incompetent to implement a financial surveillance system as far as I'm concerned. I think the risk of that is far more in Europe and in North America. They're far more likely to surveil you. And so it's even maybe arguably more important to use Bitcoin as freedom money.
And it's really common when you come to Europe and the United States that people used to think that they don't have the need to use Bitcoin as money, you know, because they see Bitcoin more as a store of value, right, as an asset, and we get it. But here the point is, we have that opportunity and we have that freedom now to use money, to use Bitcoin as money, if we don't use it and we don't take advantage of that, I think that will take away from us eventually, you know. And I was last week in a conference in the United States, and I think Jeff Booth say, the only reason you need an asset is because the money is broke. And if you're using Bitcoin and you're holding Bitcoin, you have to spend it, you know. And I know it's hard to understand this part, because most of the people say, why am I gonna pay for a hamburger now when I know that's gonna work more in the future? But I will challenge everyone here, like, if you're a Bitcoiner, a true Bitcoiner, to spend Bitcoin, or at least to visit one place, one Bitcoin Circle Economies. There are so many beautiful places in South Africa, in Brazil, in El Salvador, in Madeira, Lugano, and let's spend Bitcoin.
Yes.
Yeah, I think we've been pretty lucky with the circular economies around the world, because they're usually located in beautiful places, so it's always a good opportunity for a trip. But I'm curious now, because you have more experience than most people when it comes to creating circular economies, about the challenges. Because I've tried myself, orange peeling people, orange peeling businesses, and I found a few challenges, but you have pushed that to the next level, so you probably have other stories about the challenges of orange peeling, adoption, and education around your different communities.
Yes, well, I would, you know, again, every jurisdiction has its own different challenges, I guess. On us, it was a lot about, you know, understand. I think in developed countries, and I agree with Herman here, sometimes it's even harder for people to understand the power of Bitcoin and why it's so important for them. And we have that challenge every day. So trying for them to understand how openness, inclusivity, and non-surveillance, you know, all those characteristics of the open network, it's really, really important in Western countries. So yeah, I would say our biggest challenge is changing the biases that people already have on what is money. And that's been our biggest challenge so far. Yeah.
For us as Bitcoin Beach, the biggest challenge, we're working with so many Bitcoin Circle Economies along with Bitcoin Ekasi. We have like a grants programs for people that want to start Bitcoin Circle Economies, a fellowship program. We're organizing the summit of Bitcoin Circle Economies, and every project is different, like Andrea said, and have different challenge. But something that we see really common is to have this big expectation on doing something really quickly, you know, and start to comparing to Bitcoin Beach or Bitcoin Ekasi, or just because Bitcoin Ekasi have 200 merchants that are accepting Bitcoin, I want to have 300 merchants, you know, and that's not the case, you know. What we always say is like, start small, you know, start small. Start with a Bitcoin meetup every month, onboarding one cafe, onboarding one restaurant, and building from there, you know. And for us, Bitcoin Beach is proof of that. We started with a small idea with the potential to become bigger, and that small idea inspired the whole country eventually to build the proof of work, you know. So.
And what about you, James? Because right before this talk, we were talking about the challenges of Nigeria, which is a very particular context when it comes to Bitcoin.
All right. I think one of the challenges we're facing is, as pioneers of Bitcoin circular economies in Nigeria, and having people to be able to understand, you know, having resources in terms of books and educational resources,
material,
to be able to communicate with the locals in a way they can understand what Bitcoin should be, or what Bitcoin is, and what Bitcoin should be to them, and how they can use Bitcoin. So we have to, as the pioneers, like I said, we have to first build that, build it to a certain level where we can now use that and allow other people to also use that work of material, and also educate. And luckily for us, we've been able to, over the year, we've been able to build our circular economy, whereby 2 other circular economies are now, springing out of there to go do some stuff also in other places, because we have now confined ourselves to a limited space, so it doesn't be too big for us.
I mean, there's loads of challenges, but the last year, maybe the last year and a half especially, the biggest challenge I faced is to try and communicate to people what exactly a circular economy is. I think the name is a bit of a misnomer, but we're stuck with it, so we're using it. It's not about spending Bitcoin. That's the impression people have. It's like, oh, you're going there to spend Bitcoin. A circular economy is about, if I'm spending the Bitcoin, what's happening to the Bitcoin? What's happening to those sats? The merchant I spent it with, well, first of all, are they receiving sats, or am I using some sort of a service where the sats are being converted to fiat in the process of me spending it? Because that kind of defeats the whole purpose to start with. And then once you've established, okay, the sats that are being spent ends up with the merchant, what's the merchant doing with them? Are they cashing out? Because then you've also kind of missed the point. The idea is that that merchant then goes to somebody else and pays for their services with sats. And the idea is that the sats flow within the community and does not escape as far as possible. And it's difficult to communicate that. It's not something that you can scale because you have to sort of investigate what's happening to the sats in your community without turning yourself into a surveillance mechanism. So it's very difficult to do that. If you've got 1,000 people that you're including in your circular economy, how on earth are you going to spend enough time with every single person to find out what they're doing with their sats? So it's something that works very well on a small scale. I mean, we've been going it's into our four and a half years, and we still only have 45 merchants on board. But the example I like to use is, when you were kids, we used to play with a magnifying glass and let the sun shine through it and try and burn a leaf or something. If that beam of light is too widely spread, it's never going to burn. The more concentrated, the smaller it is, the more likely it is that the thing erupts in flames. And that's kind of what we're trying to, it's the best way I have of describing what it is we're trying to do. We're trying to concentrate our effort in the smallest area possible with the smallest number of merchants, with the smallest number of people, so that you can really try and see, how far can you push fiat out of the equation? Can you push it out to 70%? Can you make it so that people only spend 10% in fiat? I don't think it's possible to get to 100%, and that's why I say the name is a bit of a misnomer, because it's never entirely circular. But it's not something that I think can scale to, a city of a million people. Then you're doing something else. Then it's education and adoption and so on, but it's not, strictly speaking, a circular economy. And it's a very particular type of effort to try and onboard and educate people, and it's not easy to communicate.
So it's not purely about number, but it's also about the quality of the education and being with those merchants and with the circular economy as a whole on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So we only have a few minutes left, and maybe in the audience we have people that are interested into starting small somewhere in the world. What would be your advice?
I thought I was the only Bitcoiner at one point in Madeira. I was clearly not. So just putting yourself out there kind of attracts other people. Start something small, as Roman was saying. Be consistent. Start with the meetups. Talk with the merchants. Just do it, basically, because other people will come and help develop it.
Yeah, start small. Again, we have grants programs. If you want to start like a Bitcoin Circular Economy, we have a fellowship program. We have the Summit of Bitcoin Circular Economies. And I think one of the most beautiful things about Bitcoin and building a Bitcoin Circular Economy is how many people are willing to help, And like Andre say, sometimes you will thinking that you're the only crazy one, right? But there are so many crazy people. It's just that you don't say it, right? But I think you will be surprised, and if you're interested, come to talk to us, and we'll be willing to support in any way we could.
All right. like here I said, the grants are not grants at the beginning, but you need to really have very serious interest in Bitcoin evangelism, and have been doing this almost like a full-time thing, not a full-time thing though, but you need to be really consistent, you need to be really educated about Bitcoin because they're going to throw challenges, and you need to, be ready for anything. Be crazy about Bitcoin.
I think what works well, I mean, there's only a few seconds left, but I think if you really want to do it, the best way to go about it is to identify a business and orange pill that business owner as hard as you can, and build from there. There are ways to do it using charity and donations, but it's a little bit more difficult. It's way more difficult to sustain in the long run. I've seen some very successful efforts based on getting one or two really committed business owners and, orange pill them so hard that there's just no turning around. And then they kind of get the rest of the business community on board and do it that way.
And we know how hard it is to build Bitcoin circular economies, even in the small towns. And I want to give a big applause to the whole team of Plan B, because Lugano here is a real Bitcoin circular economy, and is surprised to see how many merchants and the work that the whole team is doing here. So I want to give a big applause to the work that these guys are doing here.
Well, thank you. I think it was a very interesting panel, and I hope the audience got some context for what's happening around the world, and maybe some advices. And please come and find us around the conference if you want to get started with a circular economy in your place. All right, guys.
Thank you.